listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Alright, what is going on? This is Rob Lane and you're listening to my show Straight to Video. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today on the podcast I get to welcome some UK pop royalty with a guy you could not escape from in the charts when I was growing up, all over the music magazines with his band Haircut 100, and someone who has since forged an amazing and impressive career as a singer-songwriter since going solo. It was very, very cool to hook up and chat with Nick Heyward on today's show, and as you will hear, Nick is a wonderful storyteller with some great memories of getting into music, and he still talks with such passion about his love of songwriting and the magic that music brings to his life. I think you're really going to get a kick out of this talk. Before we get into our chat, I'd love it if you enjoy this show to check out the Patreon page we have set up to give you early heads up on guests, a bonus movie podcast with some great ones on the way, access to a private Facebook group, and some exclusive straight-to-video merchandise you won't find anywhere else. I've also been teasing at a new straight-to-video project which is in the works, which is going to be announced in a couple of weeks, and all patrons will have early access and updates to that too, and it's very exciting. Probably the biggest straight-to-video, I want to say, experience yet, so if you can, please take a look at patreon.com/STVpod for all the info on that. Also, if you're listening when this episode goes live, the Call of the Wild Festival at Lincolnshire Showground is happening as we speak, and our friends Dead Skull Coffee are in attendance all weekend. If you can't make the festival but want to try some of their amazing rock and roll ground or full bean coffee, then head on over to deadskullcoffee.co.uk and add the discount code STV on checkout to grab 15% off your order. Alright, I'd love to hear what you think of this chat with Nick Heyward. He recalls some really great memories of growing up in the 70s and early 80s and the music of the time, which you'll get a real kick out of. Nick is going to be really busy over the summer with a bunch of acoustic evenings and also appearances on the Let's Rock 80s events, along with some other legendary 80s acts. So if you want to keep up to date and also grab his latest album Woodland Echoes, then head on over to nickheyward.com for all the info you need. But right now, please enjoy my straight-to-video chat with singer-songwriter Nick Heyward.
We walk along Richmond Bridge, go down by the River Thames, sandwich in between her teeth. She became Haley Mills, I became Alan Bates, more to be Ely Grace, make mistakes, but will we ever become that one, joined together in the perfect Sunday, perfect
Hi, Rob.
How's it going, Nick? You alright?
Good, yeah, good. I like your wall.
Oh, there's all kinds of 80s nostalgia going off back there.
And is that a bass?
It is, yeah. It's my jazz bass. It's my go-to.
Ah, you a bass player?
Yeah, you won't remember this, but we met very briefly a couple of years ago at the 100 Club when you got up with Clem Burke's band, the Tearaways.
Oh, wow, you were there. Fantastic.
I played bass in the opening band that night.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's amazing.
I was chatting to you at the bar briefly afterwards, and you were explaining how you and Clem knew each other, but some slightly drunk punter swept you away wanting to know about a Haircut 100 reunion, so I never got to find out how you knew Clem.
Ah. Well, actually, through the Tearaways. I mean, I was a massive fan. I always wanted to know Clem Burke. I always wanted him in my band. I think everybody wanted Clem Burke in their band or to play with Clem Burke. So I was really nervous that night.
It's a bit of a star-studded night, actually. There's Bob Geldof was there. Glenn Matlock was there.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? I had this moment, actually, that was one of those moments where you just go, Nick, mate, you've got to have a word with yourself. Here's a perfect example of why you didn't feel worthy enough to be kind of like that, go up to that level of like superstardom. Because I was playing and I'd just done I think it was a pretty good goer of a version of Fantastic Day. Yeah, it was like really up. I couldn't hear a word I was singing, but I didn't care. It was just like I'm playing on stage with Glenn Burke. I couldn't care whether the mic's on or off, to be honest. And I come off stage and as I'm walking off, Steve Van Zandt, the bandana is sitting right there.
Full on Little Steven mode.
And it's like his hand goes out to give me a high five. And a part of me was just like, yeah. And then part of me saw that it was him and had this moment where, oh my God, it's him. It's him. I couldn't do it. And I kind of like didn't high five him and then kind of slinked off stage and then didn't go up to him afterwards either and say, oh, hi Stevie. And I just thought, wow, your self-worth, Nick, is really low. The fact that, you didn't feel worthy.
You should have owned it.
Yeah, I should have just like, if I had the spirit, of that, I would have just gone up, high five Stevie, just like, yeah, man. And then been his best mate. As it happened, I just sneaked away into the night, all embarrassed.
You've spent a lot of time in America, though, obviously where Clem and Stevie are from, particularly in Florida, right?
Yeah, I had bumped into Clem in, this sounds very rock and roll, in Palm Springs.
When was that?
That was like 99 or something like that. I was going to Palm Springs because it was freezing in Los Angeles and I needed some sun and I wasn't in Los Angeles for long. I just thought, Los Angeles is supposed to be sunny and I need some sunshine. Where's the nearest sun? And somebody said Palm Springs. So I thought, I'll go there. So went there and then went to a bar and bumped straight into Clem Burke. He was just sitting there at the table. So it's like, just started chatting, which was very unlike me. But actually, it's always been an Aries friend or partner that I have that helps me with that confidence. Like my mate Austin Parker, when I was younger, he's the reason I met Andy Partridge from XTC, ran in the punk days, because Austin was just kind of like, we're going to go and meet him, mate.
We're going for it. Screw it. We're going to regret it if we don't.
Exactly that. This particular time I was with my girlfriend India and she was an Aries as well. And Aries definitely just know how to, they've got raw enthusiasm. It's like they're all Linford Christie, they're all first on the scene. They're all fast. They're all hares straight there. She just like walked straight to him and like, this is Nick Heyward, Clem Burke. I wouldn't have done that.
Oh, legendary. Your last album, Woodland Echoes, was recorded in Florida, though, right? Or was it like a joint thing?
Yeah, it was Anglo-American, a bit like my wife Sarah and I. We're sort of in both countries at the moment. And so, and my friend Ian, who I used to record in Fulham with all the sort of demos that turned into masters like the song Kite, they're all recorded with Ian. So he moved to Key West into the sort of arty area where if you couldn't afford to live in Key West because it's a pretty expensive place, you live in the marina. Ian won't mind me saying that, it's true. And you live there with all the arty people that also just play in the bars. And in fact, Shel Silverstein, the poet who wrote The Giving Tree, he used to live on a houseboat in Key West. So it's got this excellent Cannery Row kind of vibe of artist. Lots of the houseboats are painted bright colours as well. So he built this sort of ramshackle houseboat and then put a studio in it. And so I knew that he'd moved to this place called Key West, and I didn't actually know where it was. I thought it was just a sort of island in the Caribbean at the end of America, which is probably what it is. Now I know where it is. But I never thought I'd go there. Then Sarah's parents moved down to Tampa, and we were going over to see them a lot, and just thinking, I thought, I'll go down and see Ian.
Road trip it down there.
Road trip down there, stay with Ian on his houseboat, and ended up living there. He rented a room. He was there about 9 months, I think. Yeah, made the record.
Has spending time over there had much influence on your songwriting? Do you get to listen to much radio or hear new bands? Or it's almost weird. Is it harder to do that these days with the internet when you've got access to so much stuff? But I think because they have got access to 80s rock, which I like, I'm just going to listen to 80s rock. They don't get a chance to absorb all the brand new stuff. How is it for you?
Well, I was definitely influenced by the actual environment. Definitely. There was a song called Baby Blue Sky on Woodland Echoes, and it was that. It was the vibrancy of Key West. It was all the lizards there are greener than I've ever seen in my life. The geckos are greener. Everything's greener and more vibrant. The flowers are more vibrant. The sun that they get down there. And it's only 90 miles from Cuba. So it's just got this colourful vibrancy about the place. And you've got all these strange houses, a mixture of everybody who's ever sort of been there. It's a bit pirate as well. So everybody's kind of lived there and left their stuff there and then moved on and built their little white picket fence and then left. And it's also a bit off the grid. So there's some stuff that's gone on there,
Isn't there like some big like electrical thing down there? So if they have a power cut, the grid's somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
If you get a power cut, you're pretty screwed for a while because it has to be fixed somewhere else.
Well, it was always, the things like that were always happening. It's like a little Venice, really. It's like a little American Venice in the, because it floods really easily. I mean, when it rains and it really, really rains, and it's monsoony, and you just stay out in it because it's normally so hot that you just go with the rain. And I got soaked so many times. It was just nice. It was just like getting clean. It was lovely. Yeah, so, and lots of blues, loads of blues music. Bill Blue, who's a blues guitarist, he supplied some of the guitars, like old Telecasters, so I was playing those, and he lived on one of the houseboats and then did the drums on this drum kit that was left by the guy that played on Blood on the Tracks, Bob Dylan's album, and he left the kit there. And then Joey Marciano, who was the local skiing instructor and played in bands in the night. Lovely guy, brilliant drummer. He just came and drummed on some of the stuff in this guy's house that was like, inside it was mahogany wood, like an old galleon. Yeah, it's ramshackle.
That must be cool for you. I don't know if you listen back to your old albums or stuff like that, but if you do listen back to it, I guess all that comes back to you.
Yeah, well, there's strong imprints in music. As soon as I hear Hamilton Bahamon's Disco Stomp, I'm in Azalea Hall Disco in Beckenham in 1976. There's a row of girls wearing halternecks and lacquered blonde hair, and there's guys in budgie jackets and Oxford bags with round-toed shoes, and they're all dancing together in unison to this song. Alcohol's guns don't argue. Dun 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 jack jack. And it was always a bit hard. There was like quite a few hard nuts that lived in the area, so it was quite a hostile environment. But music made it beautiful. So you've got beautiful and hostile together. And then you've got pop music, and you're young and you've never heard this sound, and it's in real time. So 1976 was, a time of, I listen back now to the pop music of that time, and it's mind-blowing. The songs, how they sounded. Bohemian Rhapsody, this was the year Bohemian Rhapsody came out. And, I remember hearing it for the first time because my girlfriend posted it through the letterbox.
In a kind of like, you've got to listen to this.
Yeah, just in a kind of like, it was lovely to meet you the other night. Bohemian Rhapsody was the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
Oh, mint.
It just started off with, put it on and it's like, is this... Starts off with a question. You sit down and I was like 14, 15.
Very impressionable then. Your mind's just going to be blown.
Yeah, and you just get, is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? And you go, wow, starts asking a question and why is he killing a man? Just killed a man.
Yeah.
It's just the narrative that was going on and the beautiful music and then the whole kind of rhapsody of the end, and you've never heard anything like this.
There's no Wikipedia to figure out what he was talking about. You're making up your own answers in your own head.
Yeah, you just think, how does this human being do this? How has he done this? You don't think to yourself, oh, I could do this. You just think, this is magic. These are wizards. Obviously they're wizards.
That time it was such an eclectic time with so much happening towards the end of the 70s as well, which you grew up in, such a formative time for you. But your dad was a big jazz fan as well, so I guess that music was always around you. Didn't your dad work in a toy factory too when you were young?
God, you've done some reading up here, yeah.
But that's like a dream come true, right?
Yeah, it was. In fact, this factory is still there. I looked it up online and, I looked at it the other day. That's just a lovely thing. It's a kids' playgroup. They're doing kids' yoga there and stuff like that. And it's like there we were in the early 70s with Dad making toys. It was called Gemco Toys. And every summer holidays, I would get to go on the van and deliver the toys with him to the kids at the playgroups for the Greater London Council,
Oh, brilliant. Did you get all throwaway toys, or was you kind of outgrowing toys at that point?
Yeah, I still wanted a go-kart, so he made a go-kart. I had a sort of like go-kart in the area, but it wasn't motorised, so I wanted a motorised one. You just wanted... All I had was playing cards with pegs on the wheel to make it sound like a motor. But yeah, did have kind of toys, but, it's all you really wanted at that age was a chopper. That was it. A space hopper and a chopper.
Good combo. So is this in Beckenham you're originally from, just kind of south of the heart of London?
Yeah, Shortlands. Yeah, just on the edge of Beckenham.
Do you have any particularly early memories of going into London as a boy? Was it a big deal growing up for you, or was that just the norm?
Oh, no, it was huge. Yeah, I bought my first Hawaiian shirt in Victoria, which was at the end of the bus ride, the 54, right all the way to London.
Who inspired that?
Andy Fairweather-Low.
Yeah?
Yeah, he wore one on top of the pops, and I just thought, no, that's vibrancy, that's colour. And trips to London were magnificent. You know, I used to go up barefoot for some strange reason with my girlfriend. We used to travel up to London. I really fancied myself as a bit of a hippie. I'd had a moment there where I thought, at one point it was like, am I hippie or am I a yob? I had Dr. Martens in one part of the bedroom, you know, like, and then the other part it was like sandals, you know, and flares and, you know, because I was really into the music my brother was playing because he had the sort of like, he almost had a fro, wild kind of Phil Lynott hair, like, or Jeff Lynne hair.
Is he older than you, your brother?
Yeah, not older, not like a lot older, you know, just under a couple of years. He had great musical taste. He'd be in his bedroom playing Trick of the Tail and stuff. And well, that came a bit later, but early on it was just more like Mark Bolan, Ride a White Swan, and Argent, Hold Your Head Up. He had the early Quo albums that I just loved. I loved how basic they sounded. When the drums and bass kicked in, it was always just, you know, the beginning of Down Down is just such a brilliant thing. It's a moment in the world, you know, it's almost like if you're feeling down, I mean, you put on Down Down and you are up, right up immediately.
Was you just like a massive music fan? Like your brother was playing guitar. Was you just happy being a music fan, loving music, or did you want to play guitar and write songs as well? When did all that kind of begin to take shape?
Well, I was a massive fan because, you know, compared to real life, you know, because real life was awful. You know, it was grey. You know, school was horrible. 3-day weeks. Politics was awful. There was skinheads around. There was fighting. There was, you know, it just didn't seem like a really nice place. But music was just another world. It was transported you, and it had that positive effect on people too. You know, you could turn the biggest hard nut into a softie. It just seemed like that's where I want to be rather there. I mean, why ride a white swan? What's Jeepster? What does it mean? Why is this fantasy? Why have you just killed a man? It's just beautiful. You know, you listen to Dark Side of the Moon and you'd be transported to another world, and the album sleeves.
Otherworldly, yeah.
Yeah, the album sleeves were places. Did they exist? And, you know, you'd see a Yes album sleeve and this artist called Roger Dean, wasn't it? And, you know, you just kind of go, wow. It was like a glimpse of another world. Because this one was drab and gloomy and full of reality.
Music's kind of weird like that in a way, because I guess it could go either way. There'll be people who talk of music reflecting on what's happening. So if things aren't great, the music might be angry or political or something like that. But then you're talking about the completely opposite, for the music to transport you to a totally different place and give you a totally different mood to what's happening. So that's kind of interesting. I'd go for the positive side, like you do.
Yeah. But, you know, even the most saddest song, like that lyric goes, you know, take a sad song and make it better. It transports you. It can immediately, it's like alchemy. It can take a mood. If I put on Gustav Mahler's Fifth Symphony, if there's a gloomy feeling in my life, you know, and I'm a bit reflective, that melancholy of the song can actually dispel the melancholy in my mind, which is only temporary anyway, because you hear music and you're instantly changed. It's just a wonderful, wonderful medium. Nothing like it. You know, even the hardest punk song can do that as well. It just can lift you and separate you like a cross your heart bra from this world into that world, you know? You're transported immediately. It's like, okay, right, I got this. And that's where, when punk came in, that's where I thought I could possibly get involved in this.
Right.
You know, it was possible because before then you just thought, I can't do what Elton John does.
Yeah, I can't do the orchestration of Queen or...
No, you know, I could just mime to it as I used to. That was enough. But that's part of the process of, you know, learning and being inspired to do that, you know, because at first I just wanted to make records like that, or even getting into music myself, I wanted to make records like Talking Heads. You know, that first album, I just thought, that's the band I want to be. And when I heard XTC's White Music with songs like Science Fiction and Neon Shuffle, they just sounded like Cockney Rebel had taken in some amphetamine or something. It was just so powerful. And then when the first time I saw the jam, it just, the electricity and power of this band on stage, it just blew my head off, and it blew everybody's head off. We were all just blown apart in the audience. It was just like pure, like, you know, like, this is it. We're all here. We're all just, I don't know. This is a modern world.
Did it become obvious to you that there was this massive creative movement of different music towards the end of the 70s? You had all like the punk bands and the punk scene breaking out, but then bands like you mentioned there, XTC, Talking Heads, The Jam, all around the same time. Was you aware of it, or was you just like...
Oh, yeah. Being in London, I was super aware of it. I remember going to Chislehurst Caves in Bromley, and I was probably wearing denim, triple denim maybe, long blonde hair, platforms maybe, cheesecloth shirt for sure.
You weren't barefoot at that time, was you?
I wasn't barefoot. Orange platforms. And there was this kind of strobe light on stage and these weird guys with that looked like peacocks. And it was actually an early version of, it was the Bromley Contingent that I saw, which was an early punk version which had Susie, Billy Idol and Steve Severin from lots of early punk bands. And they couldn't really play as much. It was just like they were art students and they were kind of on stage. You know, that was enough. And I wanted to go to art college, so I was an aspiring art student. And something was happening. You know, like I was already into a band called Deaf School before punk, and they was kind of art college pop. And I just loved them. They just looked different. They weren't wearing flares and denim. You know, they looked like James Dean, some of them. And I'd been really into James Dean and Marlon Brando and the way they looked and film posters when I was younger and stuff. So I just thought, it's happening in music now. The cheesecloths are out. You know, it's like, you know, the Eagles love the music, of course, but oh my God, and all your mates are talking about this stuff as well. And then your girlfriend doesn't want to know you because you're not punk. It was sweeping all across London.
Music's very tribal, usually. You're either a metalhead or you're like indie. But was it hard to feel like that then when so much cool stuff was surrounding you? Like, oh, this is great. Then 2 weeks later or a month later, it changes again. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, well, the cultural waves were coming thick and fast in those days. The punk wave kicked off. You know, all the bands from Manchester and Liverpool, and, you know, when Joy Division hit, everybody wanted to suddenly, didn't want to be from London. You know, they just wanted to look gloomy and wear certain kind of tonic style suits just slightly and look a bit agitated and just, you know, look down. And I was really into monochrome set at that particular time, and certain ratio was later, but that was starting to develop as well, the Manchester scene, and that was having such a strong influence on music. So it was fragmenting, you know, the punk has turned into a little bit, I mean, I remember when like Teardrop Explodes and it was going a bit psychedelic, there was a bit of a psychedelic wave because punk was the big, you know, that was like the comet, you know, right. And then there was all these aftershocks going off. You know, it was actually our band that rode one of the aftershocks. It was smaller than even New Romantic, but there was a little bit of a Brit funk wave, and that's where it was ABC, Haircut 100, Funkapolitan, Pigbag, the Higsons, Fire Engines to some extent, but they'd already been around a bit. But it was anybody that was scratching around on the guitar. It was anybody that was even slightly funky. And that had only really happened because of chart number 1, which had only happened because of the Lacy Lady, and right back to kind of probably Northern Soul was always kind of lingering around, and funk had never really gone and still hasn't gone. You know, it's still around. Funk is still going strong. It's evolving all the time.
With so much amazing music happening, and there's only so many hours in a day and only so many gigs you can go to, is there anyone you missed who you would have loved to have seen in the early days who perhaps your friends saw? Because I think you did get to see, was it Talking Heads with Dire Straits opening?
Yeah, it was Dire Straits were supporting Talking Heads. Yeah, that was right. It was that way round. Because, you know, you start to get older and you just go, I've seen the ticket, and it's like, that was the case, yeah.
Anybody you did miss, though?
God, so many.
Yeah.
So many I'd really like to have seen. I mean, I can name people I've seen, but, you know, I didn't see the Sex Pistols. I thought I did, because I saw so many bands. You know, I saw the Clash, Ramones, even the Slits, you know, at the Vortex. That was a great gig. That was just manic. That was where I was standing next to Joe Strummer and Mick Jones from the Clash, just sort of, you know, just standing near them, looking at them.
Yeah, catching a glance every now and again.
Yeah. And I remember Mick Jones was full biker leather, and this girl just came up out of nowhere and poured a pint of beer over his head. And Mick Jones just carried on talking. Like nothing really had happened. But I saw Joe Strummer move away slightly. You know, like, I don't want one of those. But it was very much the case of, in those days, you got spat at if you were punk, and you got beer poured over your head. You know, it was almost like the audience was saying, don't get too above yourself. You know, right. You're punk. And so there was definitely almost like little ropes trying to sort of pull these people back to where they'd come from. And there was definitely anti-establishment. That's where it come from. And there was quite a lot of hostility around when bands started to take off big. I remember that. It was quite something when they'd all become commercial.
That's always going to happen to a certain extent, but perhaps then it was a little bit more intense.
Yeah, highly.
Highly. After school, you initially wanted to work in art and design, and I think you began working as a commercial artist. But am I right in thinking that was still within the music realm and had a lot to do with album art and album sleeves?
It did, actually, yeah. Joe McKinney-Cully, who had an office there at House of Wizard, asked me one day with Rob Stroud, who we were the two juniors there, said, can you put cork tiles up in my room, floor to ceiling? Well, we were like, yeah. And we got this stuff to fix it to the wall called Fix-A-Fix or something. And we can just remember both getting off our head on this stuff. Didn't know why. We were hallucinating in that room to these cork tiles.
No windows open or anything like that.
No windows. It was the 70s, you know, so you just did it. You did whatever you were told. But yeah, Joe, anyway, back in the room, he did Uriah Heep, Sleeves, and he did lots of Nazareth, I remember, as well. And then punk was kicking in. And the first band he did was this band called The Drones. And I was meant to deliver the artwork to them at this hotel. So I went up to the hotel, near Marylebone it was, and I had to deliver the artwork and meet the band. And I went to the hotel room and all the band were just sat around in the hotel. And it was this, I thought, God, this is like Stardust, the movie. There's musicians there. There's the manager on the phone here. I'm the kid delivering the artwork in this sort of film. And they're all kind of like, they're such punks, but they were kind of like rock stars. I thought, wow, I've walked into this. This is it, Nick. This is it. You know, I did the same when I went round to deliver some artwork to Fiction Records, to Chris Parry. You know, he'd signed The Jam to Polydor. So I went into Polydor, went up to Fiction Records and got into the room. Chris Parry came in and said, okay, son, stick your demo on.
You must have looked the part.
Well, I did. I was fully the part at that particular time. And actually, Rob and I had started a band. Because I'd started bands since school. I was always starting bands and making stickers. Our first band was called Blyfly.
What did you say to him when he said, stick your demo on then? He's like,
Well, yeah, it was that moment where I thought I could have had a demo. So let's do a demo. Let's be a band. But it's not as easy as it looks. Rob and I he bought a snare. We went back to mine and just played. And we wanted to sound like the people we loved, but you just got to start somewhere. So that's what we're doing. So endlessly playing over and over stuff in the linen cupboard for hours, just kind of, and then, you know, do it again. And then, you should rehearse again. And, you know, the more you kind of rehearse, you start to think, and then you start to learn songs.
That's such a window, though, to how the music industry has changed. If you had been gigging around for a couple of years and you was looking to approach a record label, you could have got through the door at that point.
Yeah, it's about timing. It really is timing, though. Because, I mean, you know, we could have signed, I think it was a year or 2 years later, you know, because that's that thing of rehearsing, then you met other people, and then music was changing, and you were getting better at what you did, and learning by mistakes, and suddenly, which was an absolute godsend at the time, when our girlfriends decided to throw in the towel the same week, and we had all this time on our hands to suddenly focus on the band, which was, in hindsight, a brilliant thing. I mean, at the time, it was awful.
What we're going to do?
Yeah, you just start hanging out together. And so Les Graham and I became really close at that particular time, and it's all we had to do was rehearse all the time. We were socialising and being a band, and then we moved in together above a flower shop in Gloucester Road, and we lived and breathed being a band. Even, you know, not rehearsing, we were still being a band. We wore the same clothes, we shopped together and bought the same outfits and walked down the street and imagined we were a band, and people would say, you a band.
Even the socialising becomes promoting the band as well. You're going to the clubs. And
it's a life. Yeah, you live it. You live and breathe it, you know. And that's why I thought, you know, even though we didn't have a drummer, I don't think at the time, I just walked into the NME and said, come and see the band. And I was just making it up, to be honest. That's what it was. It was just, I mean, we were a kind of band. I think we played at Ronnie's upstairs because that's about the only gig we could possibly get. And then there was a possible chance of the Rock Garden was the only other band amateur bands could get that you could actually play. And so we played there. But I think that was after maybe that was after, I'm going to check out all these facts because at the moment I'm writing about this period as well. So I want to get all the facts exactly right, you know, when and where it happened. You know, did we play the Rock Garden before the NME interview or was it after? Because I know that we played in Kensington at the college after the review because it was like a half-page article in the NME, which was gold dust at that particular time. Out of nowhere, completely out of nowhere. And just because I got asked, I just walked into the NME and asked Adrian Thrills. It's like, and he came to the flat and interviewed us and then disappeared. We thought, well, that will never appear. You know, that was just an amazing experience and that's that. But, you know, to see it there, our picture and words. And so, yeah, we played at the college and it was rammed, absolutely rammed from that NME interview. One article, and Chris Parry turned up from Fiction Records, you know, and said, like, kind of, do you remember me? You came into my office.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can't make that up. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Was you pretty confident back then? Because you said earlier on you would have never gone up and spoke to Clem Burke, but it sounds like back then you was pretty confident.
Yeah, I had confidence when it came to the band.
Right.
Real confidence, on stage confidence like that, with the band. Not on my own, just when it was us. I don't know what happened. It was just there, and anything to do with the band. But personally, no. I was riddled with insecurity.
Once Haircut 100 came together, it seems like everything was moving pretty fast. On paper, it seems that way. In hindsight, would you have liked to have had more time touring and writing, or was it good that things happened at fairly fast speed and all that energy and early creativity was captured?
Yeah, not having time to think about it too much. Everything was written and made in the moment, on the fly. I just used to sing in the same way. I would just make up words, so it was always written. I mean, Favourite Shirts, the lyrics came as and when. They're words that sounded good live. That's why they were a bit like mixed media, the words. They don't sound joined up. They're like a magpie's flown around and found stuff and just brought them back to its nest and gone, oh, that's nice, camisas preferadas. That was just because I had an Argentinian girlfriend, and I said, what is shirt in Argentinian? And just going like, oh, okay, you write that down, you go, yeah, so that's a little marble that you've taken and you've used. And also that came live because you'd play and you just sing and something would come out and it stuck with you and it sounded right. So that's the way things were happening as and when at that particular time. But it's a complicated story for all of us when we look at it because it's happened so quickly. The one team member we didn't have in place, or we did have in place, but it turned out that he wasn't a good person to have on board in the team, was the manager, who was a crook. So that doesn't help. And then when he went, even though he was good for us, you have to have somebody on the team doing that stuff. And he was really good in so many other ways.
He could pull all the strings and all that kind of thing, make stuff happen.
Yeah, so he was basically walking away with all the revenue completely, and did. So that started the band off at quite a deficit, really. It wasn't a good place to be. And so, like any team, imagine anything without a manager, any football team without a manager, let alone a good manager, let alone a brilliant manager. That definitely did change stuff. We went through what the Beatles took 10 years to go through. We went through in a year.
Wow.
It was just very fast-paced and quick and like being a mayfly, really. It wasn't a day, but it felt like a day.
Your debut album, Pelican West, would be your only one with the band before you left and began a successful and incredibly creative solo career, which, much like your musical introductions in the late 70s, rode many different musical movements. During the 90s, even getting picked up by Alan McGee and Creation Records. How did it feel for you going solo, still at a really young age? Was that exciting for you as a songwriter?
Well, it was really good that I got to work with Jeff Emerick. My plan was that Jeff Emerick was going to be the producer of the second album because I didn't think the second album was sounding good and I thought we wanted to develop and evolve. And I was becoming a huge Beatles fan. I wasn't a Beatles fan up until that time, but on the coach, that's all I was listening to was the Beatles. So I was listening to Penny Lane thinking, oh, wow, imagine even slightly sounding as grand as this and as brilliant. And I've got to develop my songwriting. This is so from another world. It was so inspiring to listen to this music. And also, Dave Bottrell, my manager, he wasn't a manager then, but definitely wanted to manage Haircut. But he had a conflict because he was working at Arista Records and you couldn't work from the record company and be a band's manager. Then, you probably can now easily. Anything goes now. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
But he had great musical taste. It was like a compliment when you knew that he was into the band. And he kept playing me Elvis Costello's new album. Because up until then, I'd just been into the punk side of Elvis. But he kept playing me Imperial Bedroom. And there was one track in particular called Town Crier. I'd had these songs like Club Boy at Sea and Date Rain Forever, and I just wanted us to sound as grand as this. And he'd made Penny Lane, Jeff Emerick. And at that particular point, I'd also just met Paul because Linda had called the studio and said, come up to one of my exhibitions and, you can meet Paul.
Wow. How was that?
Mind-blowing, as you can imagine. I'm listening to the Beatles day and night, and then Linda McCartney calls me up. Like, what?
Insane.
It was really weird. It was part of the kind of like blowing my mind stuff, really. It was too much.
So should you meet your heroes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always try to do my best when in meeting anyone, I must say, for that very reason, because, I've met some people that don't try at all, in fact, can be quite hostile. So you should meet your heroes, but not all of them, because, there are some people that I have been put off their music. You have to separate them. I can listen to the music, but there's something that's kind of gone. All I can say is people like Paul Weller are such a sweetie, absolutely brilliant. With somebody like Paul, you just know as well that you're not expecting him to be overly lovely. And then when he turns out to be a real sweetie, it's just like, oh my God, this is the guy that plugged into electricity and stuff. And also it doesn't reflect some of the interviews, which over the years, people have assumed that he might be grumpy or something. And it's just not. he has to be like that to write the songs that he does, because he's got a very strong view on how he should be and how he should sound and how he should dress.
Yeah. So how was it working when you got into the studio with Jeff Emerick on your debut, North of a Miracle? You even recorded it at Abbey Road, right?
At Air Studios in Oxford Circus and Abbey Road, yeah.
How much time was spent actually recording with Jeff and actually quizzing him on Beatles stories?
Well, funny enough, Jeff was really open about that stuff, but also open in the way that he didn't know that this was known to everyone. Like when I was struggling with the lyric, he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll tell you a little secret here, Nick. Paul was struggling with Yesterday for years, and it was scrambled eggs for ages. It's like we all know that, but like Jeff didn't know that everybody knew that. So there was a naivety and innocence, and I suppose it's the fact that with Jeff, he was actually there. He was living this stuff. I mean, I've read his book on all the ins and outs of working in the studio and the relationships between the band members and stuff, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. He was there on the front line. He was there having conversations with John and Paul about things and feeling the vibe of the band, the way people were in the studio.
You've seen so many changes in the industry and remain constantly creative, working with big label budgets to being an independent musician as well. You also get to turn back the clock with the 80s festivals too, which I think you've got a lot coming up this year, and also some acoustic evenings. Do you have a favourite aspect of all of it, or does the variety of it keep everything constantly fresh?
I must say that the joy of playing with musicians, when you've got that's lovely. Like the other day, even just in rehearsal, when it was Anthony Clark and Adam Phillips, and we're just doing, acoustic, Wurlitzer and 3-part harmonies, and you're just playing together and you're just singing together. And I got this song, Baby Blue Sky, which is, it just sounds like somebody at the dentist going, but when you hear those harmonies together and you're all singing them, and it's a beautiful thing and then you're playing the right chords and acoustic guitar is just picking, and then the Wurlitzer's playing a certain note and there's picking out another one. And then you're wizards. You're wizards just like the people you wanted to be when you were growing up, and you're doing it and you're more experienced at this and you can make this stuff happen and you're doing it. And just like now when I'm sitting on a computer and on Logic and I know what to do and how to get stuff, and I'm a better drummer than I was. It's like, this is really good. I can make music. And so I'm not going to be making Bohemian Rhapsody on a computer, but you can be creative instantly. And that's the lovely thing, and I really get excited about that. I want to start sharing more of my doodles instantly and the music that I make quickly, because I don't want to get into that trap of making accomplished music that takes a long time to actually share, because that's part of being, like you said, on a record company and having a big budget. You don't want to emulate being in that situation, because you're not, so some of the doodles that I do, which is just vibey acoustic things, songs on just piano, or just as I've done where I've just literally written songs with the birds outside, because they're playing notes that you can pick out on a glockenspiel. Blackbirds, robins, they're all giving you notes. These are notes, musical notes, and you hear them. And if you play along with them and use it as mixed media, you can make beautiful sounding. I don't know if you can hear the birds right now, but it's just...
I can. It's been great all the way through. It's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes there's geese out there and stuff, and the language that they make. And so making music that incorporates that too. The fact that you can do that, and not take it into the record company and try to convince somebody that this is going to get on Radio 1 or 2 or anywhere, in fact. I mean, it might get on Lake Junction. It's that thing of just knowing that you can actually make anything you want. You don't have to follow anything or any rules or do anything now. You're just making music and you can share it instantly. So I need to not forget that. That's an important thing to be able to do. Like this conversation is being shared. We didn't script this. This isn't from earlier.
I scripted it a little bit.
Thank God, because it makes a bit more sense. But you have to have templates in music. Like even with music, there's certain things that you do. So thank God for that, because poetry prose is much better when it's got a template as well. Films are better when they do. So it's being creative, isn't it? And just using templates and mixing it all up without the thought of where it's going to go and where it's going to be placed, because that's something that comes later. That shouldn't be the reason that you're making what you're doing.
Exactly. Like trimming stuff off because these aren't going to like it or this place isn't going to like it.
I had that when I was younger, that ambition. You had to follow certain things to do that, but that's all gone. So there's, that freedom. That's a gift, that freedom, to have that. Even if you do make something that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, you you've got to make that so that you can make moments that, genuine moments that can move people, because that's the kind of music that moves me. And if it moves me, then it's going to move someone.
Nick, thank you ever so much, mate. I don't want to keep you all night.
Thanks, Rob.
I've loved chatting with you. I'll let you go get your cup of tea, which Sarah's probably...
Yes.
Probably say, I'm not going to bring it up to him. I'm going to let it go down here till it gets cold. She's here behind you now.
Oh, look, there it is.
Tea's arrived.
I'm in for the night now.
Been a real blast chatting with you, mate. So thanks ever so much for being on the show.
Likewise, Rob. Cheers, mate.
Will we ever become that one? Join together in the perfect Sunday. Perfect
Massive thank you to Nick Heyward for joining me on today's show and for being a super nice bloke and giving us some great stories and memories. To find out where Nick is playing all this summer, be sure to check out nickheyward.com, where you can also grab his latest album, Woodland Echoes. For this and close to 200 episodes of the Straight to Video podcast, you can find them all at stvpod.com or wherever you listen to shows, but please be sure to like, follow or subscribe so you don't miss a new show when they land on Tuesdays and Fridays. So that is all for today's show. This one was a lot of fun, which I hope you'll agree, and I look forward to many more coming your way very soon.